In this video, I'm going to show you a very simple way to add and maintain historical exchange rates as additional columns in your date table in Power BI. The source we're going to use is a website called exchangerate.host, and on this website there's a range of APIs to support the retrieval of historic exchange rates. Let's have a quick look at the documentation, and you can explore this yourself, but the option we want is what's called the time series data, which enables us to retrieve a set of exchange rates over a period of time. It gives an example URL here to call the query. So let's just start off and copy that and pop it into, I go to query editor, there's our dates table, and pop it in as a new query, a new blank query. And I use the web.contents function equals web.contents, and you see it needs the URL as text. So if I paste that in to set it as text, I need to enclose it in quotation marks. And let's see what that does. It retrieves a JSON record. I've got a base currency of euro, a start date of the 1st of January, end date of the 4th of January. It's getting there, but it's not quite what I want. What I want is a base currency of GBP, and I want to retrieve US dollars and euro for 2019 and for 2020. So if you go back to the documentation, we can see the start date and the end date are mandatory, and actually it's in the URL. I don't know if you see it there. They've got the defaults of the 1st and the 4th of January there. But as optional parameters, we can add base equals, in this case, GBP. Symbols equals, in this case, I want USD, and EUR for US dollars and euro. So let's go back to our query. So if we say start date, if we start with 2019, 0101, and end date 2019 12/31. I'm only retrieving 1 year because actually this API will return a maximum of 1 year at a time. And I want to set my base currency, so I do ampersand base equals GBP, and I define the symbols that I want to retrieve, so ampersand symbols equals USD, comma EUR. That should be what I want. So let's take a look at the record, convert it into a table, and expand the values. And we can see we've got a table of all of the dates of 2019 and the US dollar exchange rate and the euro exchange rate against a base currency of GBP. Now, in my particular model, I'm not fussed about having so many decimal places, and if you're not fussed about so many decimal places, it is really good practice to get rid of them, because getting rid of them will reduce the number of unique values in the column, which will reduce the amount of space the model takes up. That's the way the Power BI compression works in the background. So I'm going to add a couple of columns. So a new custom column for my USD values. I'm simply going to round down, or not round down, I'm going to round the number down to 2 decimal places. So USD equals dot round USD, comma 2 for 2 decimal places. Now I'm just going to copy that for later. Okay. set the type to number. Oops. All fingers and thumbs today. And I can do exactly the same, add another custom column for the euro. And instead of value.usd, value.eur. And change the type. Click tick. Now I can get rid of the original two columns. Change this to type date, and I may as well call it date as well. So there's our query retrieving USD and Euro exchange rates against the base currency of GBP for every single day of 2019. Let's rename it X rates 2019. Now I'm going to do exactly the same for 2020. Now the good news is I don't have to go through all those steps. I can just simply duplicate the query, rename it 2020, and where I specified the source, I can just simply change the start and end date, because that's the only thing that's different. And it's just the year value that's different. 2020, change 2019 to 2020. And click tick. I go to the end of my steps. I can now see my exchange rates for 20. That's interesting. 2010. Let's change that. Just shows you how easy it is. Yeah, I set the dates to 2010, not 2020. Well, now you know you can retrieve 2010 exchange rates as well if you want. There we are. Now, a couple of things. My exchange rates 2019, I've loaded them in. I never have to load them again. So let's exclude them from the report refresh, because it just wastes time. I've already got the dates, the values, that they're not going to change, and I don't need them in my main report. I just need them in the background here. 2020, on the other hand, isn't complete yet. So, and the way the API works is, if I specify future dates, it's just going to return null values for future dates. But it's the 9th of October 2020, and tomorrow, if I refresh this query, it'll retrieve the 10th of October with the future dates after that being null. So it's a very simple way to maintain my exchange rates as time progresses. So my 2020 query, I do want to include in the report refresh, but I don't need to load it into the report because it's still just a background query. So now I'm going to append the two together just to create one single exchange rates query. If I had 3 or more tables, I could go for that option. I don't in this case, but you can see I could easily go back several years and into the future to save me having to visit this again next year or the year after. I can rename that exchange rates Again, I don't need to load it into the model, but I do need to refresh it. Now one little trick, because I'm going to merge this now with my dates table, so I'm just going to remove duplicates from the date column. Now there aren't any duplicates in here, but going through the process of removing the duplicates tells Power BI that this is an index column, and it makes it faster and more efficient to merge. I've already done that on my dates table earlier. So I'm going to merge exchange rates into my dates table using the column date. And I'm going to use all the values from the date table and anything that matches in my exchange rates table. I'll expand that. I don't need the date, and I don't want the original column as a prefix. Now you can see a lot of these values are null, but that's because these are future dates. If I close and apply now, I can see the extra columns now in my date table. I don't want this auto summarization. It would be a nonsense to auto summarize based on exchange rate. Well, I suppose unless you were doing some kind of average, maybe. But I'm going to turn it off. It would certainly be a nonsense to sum them, so don't summarize. And finally, if we have a look at our data, we can see in all the future dates for the rest of 2020 the values are blank, but if I scroll down, you can see there's today, the 9th of October, I've got the exchange rates, and all the dates before that I've got the exchange rates. And tomorrow when I refresh the data set, the 10th of October will be populated as well. So that's a very simple way to add and maintain historical exchange rates within your date table in Power BI.